Brought down and taken on the turn, and it's a goal. Gordon Wallace has scored for Dundee.
O'Donnell doesn't get it. Chance with Ferguson and goal. Beautifully taken by Ferguson.
Wright has done very, very well. There's a lovely cutback. Surely he must put it away. He has. Coyne. That's a magnificent goal by Hugh Robertson.
Dens Park, the 6th of May 2000. Dundee Football Club are taking on arch-rivals Dundee United in yet another keenly awaited derby encounter. The modern settings of the ground celebrate the club's history, which stretches back to 1893. Inside the stadium, pre-match hospitality is in full swing, while fans across the city also relish another classic game. A large body of support reflects a unique and distinguished history and tradition, one which has seen the club win a league championship, the Scottish Cup, 3 League Cups, and become one of the first British teams to appear in a European Cup semi-final. Today's team is no less committed than their forebears, but this afternoon's game has its own special tensions.
Right, come on.
Through good times and bad, the team and supporters have survived 2 world wars, economic crises and fluctuating fortunes. From this dressing room, legends such as Alan Gilzean, Doug Cowie, Billy Steele and Jockey Scott have written their own place in the club's record books. Over the past century, Dens Park has seen both joy and despair in equal measure. With football gaining in worldwide popularity, they enter the new millennium with renewed strength and optimism. This is their story. The story of the Dark Blues starts when 2 clubs in Dundee, Our Boys and East End, amalgamated in 1893 to form Dundee Football Club and join the recently formed Scottish League. The first official fixture was against Glasgow Rangers at West Craigie Park on the 12th of August that year, in front of 5,000 enthusiastic fans, a game which resulted in a 3-3 draw. Within a few months, the fledgling club had moved to a better equipped ground in the docks at Carolina Port, a home they were to occupy for the best part of 5 years. One of their earliest stars was centre-half and captain William Plum Longear, who also played for Scotland and was to become the club's trainer for over 20 years. Despite some ambitious signings, the sight of the ground meant that large crowds only turned out for the bigger games. And as the club's financial situation worsened, so did their position in the Scottish League. At the bottom, and after a players' strike, the club went into liquidation, but was reborn under fresh ownership and then moved to a new ground. At Dens Park, on the northern outskirts of the city, the first game was played in August 1899. And with William Wallace appointed as the team's first manager, this was to prove the beginning of better times for Dundee. As the new century got underway, a series of First Division runners-up places in 1903, 1907 and 1909 paved the way for the club's first major success. Their 1910 Scottish Cup final victory against West of Scotland side Clyde went the distance in more ways than one. It took 3 visits to Ibrox Stadium before the deadly finishing of John Sailor Hunter sealed a 2-1 result, which ensured the first major trophy for Dens and a night of celebration for the Jute City. As well as Hunter, other prominent players of the day included Scottish international forwards Jack Fraser and Sandy McFarlane, and English centre-half Herbert Dainty. But as often happens after major success, the great cup-winning side gradually broke up as the Great War loomed, and it was only after its conclusion that the Dark Blues were to regain anything like their old form. In 1919, former Dundee and Scotland forward Sandy McFarlane became manager. For 3 years they maintained 4th position in the league. Average attendance rose to 15,000 and major improvements were made to Dens Park, with the construction of the £60,000 uniquely shaped North Stand in 1921. The team in the early 20s boasted a number of internationalists, and characters such as left-back David Napper Thompson, a full-back whose style was ahead of its time, and touchline terror outside left Alec Troop, who in 1923 was sold to Everton for £4,000, a substantial sum in those days. The strength of the side was demonstrated when they reached their second Scottish Cup final in 1925, only to suffer a 2-1 defeat at the hands of Celtic at Hampden Park, despite the efforts of centre-forward Davy Halliday, to this day Dundee's league goal-scoring record holder with 38 in one season. Soon the 20s gave way to the 30s, and although George Hill was not to join the club until later, he clearly remembers earlier years.
I supported Dundee during the 30s, before I ever thought about ever thinking I would play for them. And I would see quite a lot of names of that time playing at football. Bill Marsh and Alec Troop I saw in 1930. He had just come back from Everton. And the week before, a Harry Ritchie from Hibs had signed for Dundee. So that was playing against Hearts in the Scottish Cup in 1930. I remember that fine. I think Dundee got beat though.
By the 30s, the debts incurred in the building of the new stand a decade earlier meant that many star players were sold south of the border. Dundee consistently managed to replace these stars with homegrown talent such as Jock Gilmore, Jimmy Robertson and Colin McNabb, who all went on to play for Scotland. But the constant drain of talent produced the inevitable consequences, and Dundee were relegated to Division 2 in 1937-38.
Well, 1939 Jerry signed, Jerry Fallon, and I signed in February 40, both signed by Andy Cunningham. And I think we would be the last players, I'm talking about juniors, you know, that was signed before Dundee stopped playing, which they did in May of 1940. And Andy Cunningham was the manager for that period when I was, and Jerry was at Dens. But he was different in a way from George Anderson. He was a manager, a paid employee, whereas George Anderson was a managing director, which was a different kettle of fish. In other words, George Anderson probably had more scope than what Andy Cunningham had. But both of them were good men, I thought, yeah.
With the onset of the Second World War, the Scottish League was abandoned, and with dwindling crowds and increasing numbers of players being called up, Dundee decided to go into abeyance rather than continue in a regional league. In 1944, the club restarted and bounced back under director-manager George Anderson.
45-46, they had formed the B League, and we won it. No bother. I mean, well ahead of the... Airdrie were the best, were the main opponents at that time, but we were well above them, and we won the league 45-46. We didn't get promotion because the authorities said that football wasn't back to normal. So we had to win it 46-47. We won it in 45-46, 46-47, and then we were into the A Division in 1947. But we had to win the B League twice before we got there. And we did.
Alongside George Hill was a young Doug Cowie, one of a fresh intake of players who arrived at Dens under the stewardship of Anderson, and over a 16-year period was to make a record number of appearances for Dundee.
I would put Doug in the upper bracket of footballers in Scotland of his time. He was a right half when he came, and then George Anderson put him to centre half, and it was Gallagher, Cowie, Boyd, half-back line. It was, well, you could say there wasn't a better one in Scotland. And Doug himself eventually went left half and just played just as well. Alfie could go at centre half sometimes, and Doug went left half. But Doug, without a doubt, was one of the great players of the post-war period.
George Anderson looked after me like the son he never had. He was just a larger-than-life person, you know, the bow tie and the bowler hat, and everything he did was big. And I think he realised, and the players realised, that they give as much back as he was giving them, you know. And I think that's the way he was successful. I may be biased a wee bit because he saw me playing and he signed me personally And every break in the game he gave me. Every break in the game he gave me. I'm very lucky. He maybe saw something in me that I didn't see.
In the 1947-48 season, Dundee managed to finish fourth. But there was agony on the final day of the following year when this saved penalty meant that the Dens men failed by 1 point to be champions. After the disappointment, Anderson rebuilt the team. The highlight being the signing of inside left Billy Steele from Derby County in 1950 for a Scottish record fee of £23,500. An established Scottish international and one of the biggest names in British football, he was soon to be joined in a forward partnership by Bobby Flavel. And in October 1951, Dundee were set for glory.
I think maybe George Anderson was thinking, we're a team that's just going to miss out on things, you know. We're a nice football team, but we're just going to miss out. And I think he was looking ahead to get that, the vital spark that was going to make us win things. And he came up with like a Billy Steele. Billy Steele was everything you'd look for in a football player. He was great at a few things. He was a great narc for a start. Fortunately, the next day he forgot about it. That was the beauty about him. He was a great storyteller, Billy Steele, always giving jokes or telling stories. And he was a great player, great player. Fortunately, I played behind him and not against him.
Billy was taking a corner kick, and Bobby Flavel and I were all up for the corner, and Bobby Flavel was in front of me, and Billy nodded his head for Flavel to come over to him, and Flavel went over and had a wee chat with him at the corner flag, and he came running back with a smile on his face, and I always remember the referee saying to him, "What's he wanting?" "Oh," he says, "it's all right, ref, he's asking me, do I want the lace on the right side or the left side?" That was the sort of things that went on in these days. I suppose nowadays you get a yellow card for it or something.
At the semi-finals, I think we went to Ibrox and beat Motherwell 5-1. That's when Steele and Flavel went to town and Bobby Flavel scored a hat-trick. And then we went, of course, to play Rangers. I remember we were down 1-0 half-time, and then we equalised. Then we went in front, and there was about 2 or 3 minutes to go. And George Young took a long kick into the area, into the 6-yard box. I left the ball, playing centre-half, I left the ball to the goalkeeper. Bill Brown came out with Thornton, and they clashed a wee bit, and the ball went down without anybody touching it. You get a free kick, and Alfie boys lined up to take the free kick just inside their half. Billy Steele runs back, and he says, "You go in, Alf, I'll take the free kick," which was perfect because Billy Steele put it right onto Alfie's head, and we were in front. So the next chapter I'm thinking is now, over my dead body, they're not going to score in the last couple of minutes. So it was a great feeling. And then when we came back here, of course, there must have been 15,000, 20,000 people. And you felt so pleased for them that they'd seen Dundee winning a bit of silver here. You felt more pleased for them than you did for yourself, really.